Deference is an uncomfortable thing. I get some because of the funny collar that I wear, and I'm never comfortable with it. But for people to stop what they are doing and deeply bow as I walk by, well, that's just totally out of line. When it happened, I wanted to walk the other way. Several years ago, I visited the Amazing Grace Orphanage, part of a Sudanese refugee camp in northern Uganda. All of the men with whom I spoke were very impressed that my wife and I had 2 sons. That is an especially big deal in that culture. But I mentioned once that my wife was a widow when I met her and that I adopted her sons. After that, whenever I passed by the widows who lived in the orphanage, they stopped what they were doing and bowed deeply. I remain so deeply humbled that a woman would give me her heart and her children. But these widows at the orphanage humbled me some more. Though I had not spoken with them much because they were busy and we didn't have a language in common, they communicated with utter clarity. In that act, too, I learned more about their culture and their life situation. In our society, if a husband and father of young children dies, while a very great tragedy, it is unlikely that the widow and children will starve to death. In a refugee camp in Africa, it is likely that they will. And so I bring this understanding to a curious passage in the letter of James. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to take care of orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained by the world. Well, that is something quite different than give me that old-time religion. And I'd like to quote James when someone tells me that they are spiritual but not religious, replying, "Oh, you're not religious. Did you know that religion is to care for orphans and widows in their distress and to keep oneself unstained by the world?" Well, that would put an end to the deference. Why would James define religion in such a narrow way and say nothing about rituals and praise? In his society, too, widows and orphans starved. They had no power in a patriarchal society. They needed advocates, benefactors, and protectors, and God commanded godly men to fill those roles. Being religious in a way that is pure and undefiled before God, then, was doing something about the vulnerable and powerless people in society. And it was less about ritual. There are many commandments in the Old Testament and the New to take care of widows and orphans, and to not take advantage of them. In other words, don't focus on performing rituals correctly, but first focus on taking care of the powerless people in society. Or as James summarized it, be doers of the word and not merely hearers. And he also said not to be hearers who forget, but doers who act, for they will be blessed in their doing. What are we doing for the powerless people in our society? As a congregation, quite a bit. And we could probably do even more. Volunteers and offerings of money will provide quality shoes for every child in a Title I elementary school in Springfield for the 2nd year in a row. Volunteers regularly cook for and serve homeless teenagers on the square downtown. Volunteers, offerings of money and food, provide food organization and helping hands for hungry people who visit the Well of Life just past our parking lot to the south. And volunteers pack nutritious food that goes all over the world, and some of them personally deliver medicine and medical care to our brothers and sisters in Haiti. And there's more. You even pay the salary of this priest so that I don't go to the grocery store, pick up lunch, and run back to my secular job, but instead can stand beside a car parked in the handicap section and visit and pray with a passenger who doesn't even have the power to get out of the car and go shopping. We have heard the word this morning and we will likely forget it. But let's act. Let's do the Word. And I'm not talking just about passing the plate. We're not talking about pledge cards this month. I'm talking about doing something for someone who is powerless. We first have to notice that person. We don't have to look under bridges for homeless people. Children everywhere are powerless. Very old or very sick people are powerless, and believe me, they need advocates, especially if they live in institutions. Oftentimes, those who are mentally ill are powerless in our society. We find powerless people at the grocery store, at work, or perhaps at home. Next, we might have to set our schedule or task list aside and defer to their moment of need. We can bow and show deference to God not just in our solemn assembly, but to every powerless person we encounter. James also said, "Every generous act of giving with every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father." Let's do the Word. And let's start with the great Thanksgiving and eat our spiritual food, not as mere ritual, but as preparation and nourishment for action. Amen.